Hi everyone, and last month I promised you something sweet. So we're doing two dishes today, a savoury and a sweet. And those of you that are following me regularly now, maybe you notice that although it's always seasonal and we do nod to Halloween and Easter, that sometimes there doesn't seem to be method in my madness. But the thing is that in your kitchen at home, you have a plan, you have a shopping list, and then you have all these bits in the fridge that you need to use up. So I think that this is actually as it comes in our kitchen here. And it's very much, okay, what are we cooking this week? And that's what I would like to try and show you on this show. Reality, using what we have, using what's available in Scotland, and enjoying good food at a reasonable price. So I make no apology for the fact that sometimes it uses a little bit of this and a bit of that, because that's what life's like at home. You're not starting with some pristine layout of ingredients that you've just purchased specially. Life's not like that, is it? So, two dishes today, and we're going to start with the savoury one and get it into the oven. It's a very quick, easy dish, but something that we haven't done before on the show. So I've got a baking tray lined with a bit of parchment. Now, I use parchment a lot for things because it doesn't stick and it keeps my baking trays for a much, much longer life because they don't get ingrained with little bits of burnt stuff. So my baking trays have been on the go for about 2 years and they still look like new and they get used all the time. So you pay the big heavy money for paper, but you save money on baking trays. And when I'm baking, these papers are recycled. So today's paper happens to be a new sheet, but they stay in the kitchen, and if they've just been used for baking, they get used a lot. They don't just get used once and then binned. So when there's still life in them, they get used. So that's something to think about. I never mix ones that are fishy because that would taint other food. And once it's been used for meat, it goes on the fire. But when it's baking, it can still have more uses. So again, being thrifty. So what I'm going to do, well, I saw these really nice mushrooms at the market. They're just commoner garden, big open flat mushrooms, not expensive. And this dish today is actually vegetarian. And mushrooms are considered quite meaty in that they've got a nice kind of flavour and umami to them. They're good, they're lovely, and they're a great way of transporting other fillings. So we're going to use them and stuff them today. But you could use the stuffing with other ingredients as well. If you could stuff onions. If you boil the onions first so that they're softened, you can take out a few of those middle leaves, use them for your spag bol or something, and put your filling in that casing, and it bakes beautifully. You can also scoop out some of a courgette, add that into the filling and have boats and use the filling for that. So you can use lots of vegetables to make a lovely filling. So what am I going to do today? Well, I've got 4 of these lovely big ones. They seem big, but when it's autumn time, we sometimes find parasols, which are the size of a tea plate. They're amazing. And what I also do sometimes with mushrooms is I egg and crumb them as if they were a Wiener Schnitzel. Egg and crumb them, fry them in a pan, and they're lovely. Like, I hesitate. I don't like this kind of veggie steak idea. It's a mushroom. But when you egg and crumb it, it makes a lovely sort of centerpiece in a dish. And that's a really good use of mushrooms too. So we've got these 4 lovely mushrooms here. And what am I going to fill them with? Well, as I said, we're running a real kitchen here. What have we got? What are we cooking? Well, 1 week we did the pizza recipe, if you remember. So you can go back onto Google and find the pizza recipe. And I always make my own tomato sauce. There's an awful lot of aisles in the supermarket that are bottled sauces and additives and stocks and things. And we don't use anything like that, which saves a lot of money. And it also saves a lot of the environment because you're not involved in big multinationals who process things. and you're not involved in carrying bottles to the bottle bank. So I do use canned tomatoes. They're in the house because I wouldn't be having a tomato until those Scottish tomatoes come back in season. And that's quite in the news at the moment. People are realising how much imported food we eat. So this is just little leftover from my pizza topping. So it's my tomato sauce with our own chives, our own onions and leek, our own herbs, and it's really delicious. Now, you can make double in the pan when the pan's on anyway, and you can freeze it. Or as I did, when I make it, I just keep a little bit aside and not use it for the pizza, because I know there'll be something else another day that I can use it for. So this is perfect as a nice moist starting for my mushrooms here. So I'll just pop a spoonful on each. Now, these ones will not be vegan because we're a butter-loving household, so there'll be butter in here, and we're also using a lovely cheese. So we're not going down that path today. But this mixture, when I saw this sauce, I thought, those mushrooms, perfect, a meal. So that will spread out in the heat of the oven and will be lovely, giving it some lovely moisture. And we're going to add some other moisture to this. And the next moisture is going to be some lovely cheese. And this is Fleet Valley Blue cheese, which happens to be organic and happens to be raw milk. But to me, that's not a big issue. Raw milk cheeses are beautiful, just as safe and just as delicious as pasteurized cheese. It's all about the skills of the cheesemaker and the quality of the milk they use. So cheese is something that is high in protein. It's very good for us. We get a lot of fat-soluble vitamins as well. And it also is something that if you leave it lying around and you don't refrigerate it, the bugs like as well, because it's rich in goodies. So it doesn't matter if it's raw milk or pasteurized milk, cheese needs to be treated with respect and chilled when you're not using it. But this cheese also was left over from a dish I was doing, and I popped it in the freezer because it's too messy for a cheese board, but perfect for cooking. So if you have a good cheese, you can freeze it and just label it, and then you can use the scraps on your pizza or in a cauliflower and blue cheese soup, for example, anything like that. It won't grate, so we're going to crumble it, and crumbling works very well. So we're going to crumble this lovely Fleet Valley Blue on top of the on top of the tomato sauce. And it will melt beautifully. Now, Fleet Valley Blue is made by the Ethical Dairy down in Dumfries and Galloway, near Gatehouse of Fleet. It's a lovely place to go and visit. They've got a great cafe. You can play crazy golf. You can go on ice cream courses, because they're famous for their ice cream. And you can go on cheese courses as well. They will show you how to make their cheese and give you a tour of their cheese place. We in Fife here also do cheese courses, more about appreciation and how people make cheese. So if you want to be a cheesemaker, it goes to hers. If you want to be able to know what to buy, how to use it, what to cook with, and learn more about our cheeses, come to me. Right, I'm all sticky, but that was a lovely dose of the Fleet Valley Blue, which will melt beautifully. Last but not least, when you melt cheese, there is always that little bit of fat and oil that comes out, which is totally delicious. That gives us the flavours. But it does mean that you also want to absorb those so that you keep them and keep the flavour on the mushroom. So with that in mind, I've got some of our lovely breadcrumbs. Again, nothing wasted. The heels of bread, bits that are getting a bit tired or a bit dry, they go into our mortar and pestle, and we just do them by hand. And you get these lovely, lovely breadcrumbs. So I'm going to pop some of them on top as well, because that'll hold the cheese and keep those lovely flavours on the mushrooms. Now, they're a mix of whole grain and whatever we happen to have, but they're absolutely delicious. Now, last but not least, I've got a little bit of summer harvest rapeseed oil. We grow very good rapeseed oil in Scotland. There's Summer Harvest and Supernature, really delicious. Summer Harvest is in Perthshire, Supernature is in Mid Lothian, and I'm just going to put a little drizzle just to help the mushrooms cook in a nice little bit of oil, like so. Now, my sauce is already seasoned because it was used for the pizza, so I'm not going to add too much salt, just a little bit on the top, but I am going to add pepper. And these will take about 15 minutes in the oven. You'll know when they're sort of fallen and flat and sizzling. There's not really you can put it in when there's other things in the oven. It doesn't matter so much about the temperature. I've put in the recipe about 180, but you can just bung them in when other things are cooking. And they'll be really delicious for a nice supper treat. And those are going to go in the oven. Simple, economical, and a bit of fun too. Now, while the mushrooms are cooking and the oven is on, I'm going to make something else. And I'm going to start with a basic shortbread and then take it from there. So this is my granny shortbread recipe. There are lots out there on Google. This is the one that's on my website, scottishfoodguide.scot. Couldn't be simpler, and I think it's delicious. So that's the one I go for every time. So the proportions are 3-2-1. So 1 part sugar to 2 parts butter to 3 parts flour. Very simple. And that's what I'm going to do. So you want your butter. Now, some of the methods vary. That's the thing. And the method that I believe in is creaming my butter and sugar first and gradually adding the flour and using my hands. So take off those diamonds before you start this. Not that I have any, but you might. So that's the key thing for this. Now, some recipes have you rubbing in the butter to the flour. But the thing is, if you have a dry mix, it's difficult to rescue it. Whereas this way, if you feel that, the butter was slightly light or the flour was slightly over, different flours will absorb different amounts of fat. Then you've got the power still to adjust the consistency. So I've got in here the sugar and butter. I like using brown sugar because it gives it a nice caramel flavour. But it's not essential, but you can use any of these sugars, the darkest to the whitest. Now I've put the J-cloth underneath just because it helps me to hold it steady and it doesn't clatter. And I'm just going to start by working, nice clean hands, working the sugar into the flour, into the butter. Yes. So it's coming quite quickly because it's nice and soft. I always keep one of the butters out of the fridge so that it's ready for cooking. There you are. Now you can see that already is really soft and creamy, like so. There you are, nice and like butter icing at the moment. And then we're going to add some of the flour. Okay, maybe about 1/3 of the flour, and work that in as well. Now, I get to be in my bonnet. There are some absolutely gorgeous shortbreads out there. Walker's, pure butter. Crystal's, and over in Dunbartonshire, where Crystal hand makes small batches with Highland butter, and oh my goodness, so good. So there are butter shortbreads, but you do have to watch out because some shortbreads and indeed many oatcakes have got palm oil these days. And palm oil is not in any shape or form good for us or good for the environment. It just isn't. And they put it in because it's cheap. It doesn't do you any good. So over COVID, we really focused on, just making everything ourselves. And once you get into the habit, it's so much cheaper, so much more enjoyable. And I was doing it before, but I probably bought the odd oatcake. And now I'm just so fussy because it's really hard to find one without palm oil. And this is definitely a palm oil free house. Now you see that's coming together beautifully. And I've got the control to add the flour and knead it in gradually. And that's much easier and gives me a lovely texture for the shortbread biscuit. So that's what we're going to start is with our basic shortbread here. Scottish Food Guide, my website, is 20 years old now. And if you haven't taken a look, why not? It's an online, very transparent, very fair, very independent quality assurance. It has received 0 public funding of any description. The members pay a very modest amount, and I do all I can for them all the time. And they are all tried and tested. So check it out for places for romantic dinner, places for a lovely bowl of soup, places to buy great cheese. So it's the producers as well as the chefs. So that is definitely worth a look. There's Scottish Cheese Trail on it and Scottish farm shops. and there's no commission on anything you buy. So it will tell you either where to buy it, or you can buy some of it online as well. And the great thing is, there is no big multinationals. It's not them that's getting the money, it's the producer and these chefs that are getting the money. And that is very important to me. Same with our book, Meadows. It's not Amazon getting the money. You know, if every time you buy a book, you're helping a family business. So do think about it. And the book is available online via the website as well. Now, at this point, I have got a lovely mix, a lovely doughy mix, and a tiny bit of flour left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that for the rolling out. Back in a minute. Okay, so you saw, there's some interesting reflections happening here with this beautiful sunny day. You saw me make the dough in real time, and I've now started rolling it out. So I've just used a very simple round cutter today, and I've already got that many, which is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So, and I'm going to get some more, and that's out of a 150 gram batch of flour. So I've done a re-roll here, and I'm just going to use the cutter. Now, I'm using one of these sort of flexi chopping boards, and you don't have to use that. But the reason I use it is because when you're using a metal cutter, and this is one of Granny's, you know, it's an old one, you do scrape. And I just feel the amount of biscuits I make, I don't want to spoil my nice granite. So I'm just taking precautions because, you know, you are doing a bit of scraping around. So I think it's quite good to put something just to protect your surface. These are ready to go as well. So they will just go on the next tray down. So these ones can go into the oven. And I start on the next tray. And they spread out a little bit, but not a lot. So just be aware of that. And it's better, as you can see, if you can just lift it straight on the baking tray. That makes for a much neater, better finish. And if some of it's breaking around the edge, that's fine, because I can do another re-roll. There's no rule about re-rolls when you're making shortbread. You can do a re-roll and it won't affect the taste or the texture. It'll be lovely. So what am I going to do with these, having made the shortbread? Well, it's a favourite in our house. I thought, let's do a favourite. Might as well do things we love eating, eh? So I'm going to do a re-roll with this. So what I'm doing today is what you might know as German biscuits, or Belgian biscuits, or Empire biscuits, or as they're known in Sweden, medallions. So that's what we're going to do today, and they're absolutely delicious. And you know what else they say in Sweden? They say a loved child has many names. So maybe that's why these biscuits have got so many names. So again, these are going to get a little piercing on the fork on the top. They're going to bake in the oven for about 20 minutes. And when they're lightly golden, we're going to take them out and we're going to sandwich them together with jam and top them with icing and a glassy cherry. No sweeties in this house, glassy cherry. And I normally do it with raspberry jam because I think it is lovely with a dark berry jam. But I've actually got gooseberry jam today, which is delicious, and also dark because we had really dark red gooseberries, which made a delicious jam. So these are going to go finish off the rolling, put them in the oven, and we'll decorate them. And also here we have got the stuffed mushrooms have come out of the oven and they're absolutely delicious and ready to go. And I'm just going to finish them off. I've got some chives already growing in the garden. So they've come up now already, now that it thinks it's spring. I don't know if we've got rid of all the snow, but it certainly thinks it's spring. They've been washed in case the pigeons have been near them. And I'm just going to lighten up the surface with some nice fresh chives on the top of each one. And these will be lovely for just a nice light meal. There we are. Beautiful. Now that recipe will be on the scottishfoodguide.scot website. The shortbread recipe is already there. And come back in a few moments to see the shortbread turning into medallions. And we're back. They are now out of the oven and you can see they've got a lovely golden hue on them, which is absolutely perfect. And I'm putting a little bit of the jam in. This is my homemade gooseberry jam. So it's got a lovely red colour. You can do it with any kind of filling, but I do think a dark jam works rather beautifully. And pop it in the middle. Now you don't need to feel you need to spread it all out, the gravity of the biscuit on top will do that for you. So you want it to be enough that it will spread out to the edges, but you can pop it in the middle. Now, when they first come out of the oven, they're very soft. So give them a chance to harden a little bit before you handle them. But they're warm now, but that's enough so I can handle them. And in the empty oven that's still warm, I've put the cutter. If you can get metal cutters, they're much better. You get a much cleaner, sharper edge than plastic. But they can rust. So just sling them in an empty oven and they just air dry in there, and it keeps them in prime condition. They can be quite expensive, but they also look out for them in antique and charity shops, because often there's old ones lying around, and they're very easy to spot and great to have. So I'm just popping these little hats on, all of these. And you want to do a decent batch. That's why I did 150 grams of flour, because you double them up. And I am not one for making these giant big things. I prefer little cakes, and you can also have two, but sometimes in the shops they can be rather over large. So if you're going to make your own, the recipe is on the website and also in our book. I do hope some of you are buying copies of this book. I'll be watching you. We'd be delighted, and we can do signed copies for you. You only have to ask via the website. If you haven't got time to make these and you're out and about looking for a nice day trip, some of the best ever medallions, Empire biscuits, are at Arden over at Dumbarton. A lovely wee day trip, great farm shop, garden plants and things as well, and a lovely cafe where you get superb ones of these. So I would recommend them as well. Now in here I've got some glassy icing. Now it's just icing sugar. Sieve it before you try and make the icing. And keep it a little bit on the thick side. If you can see, it just kind of, do you see how the peak just turns over itself? That's what you're looking for texture-wise, because then it won't roll off your biscuit. And you don't want it to roll off the biscuit. So again, pop it in the middle and let gravity do the rest. Now that one has got a rather obstinate gooseberry in there, I can see, so it's not quite level. But we'll soon deal with that. Any rejects, of course, Boos is downstairs. He will happily sample a reject. So a little bit of these on the top. That will settle, and better to leave it for a couple of hours if you can bear it before you try and eat them. Now the glassy icing, I just add water to. And classically they would be white, but you can add a little bit of colouring if you want. But if you look out for it when you're buying it on the bakery shelves, the royal icing has got egg white in it. That's what we used when we were decorating the gingerbread house one year, remember? But it hardens to a rock, so it's not quite so nice for these. Great for gingerbread house, but not for these. And I'm just doing a few, like so. And you can see how they're forming a beautiful little topping there. And we'll add on a little half glassy cherry on the top. And that is our little sweet treat for today. And I was having a think about the recipe and the ingredients we've used. And only the black pepper and the sugar and the tinned tomatoes are actually imports. So you can do some lovely colourful meals with local produce, even in February, because we get Scottish flowers now as well. So haste you back and have some good fun cooking.